Grim Reaper.
Yes, we are live, and we're just talking about Russ being the. Russ is like usually reports. Kevin said that he was actually lost his title because somebody else reported on Facebook a death before Russ did, which is rare. Apparently.
Yeah, it is rare. But who died just recently, Russ? It's been in the last week.
Boy, there's people all the time. I mean,
there are people all the time.
People die every day.
They do keep you busy, Russ. They really do keep you busy. So.
I will say this. I don't post every death. I only post the ones that affect me.
Okay.
Well, you must be affected by most people because you post a lot of deaths.
Well, this is the sign of you're turning into a grandparent because this is like my grandparents just did nothing but read the obituaries all the time,
Yeah.
Did you post Patty Duke? It might have been Patty Duke.
Patty Duke. That is the one. Yes.
There you go.
Yes. Yeah. On my Facebook, Ed Berliner posted ahead of you. So.
Yeah, I was actually on the road at that point, but I saw it, and so when I finally was stopped, I posted. Yeah. And that's what my downfall was. So,
The last one I posted was Keith Emerson. When somebody musical and prominent, I'm the one who usually posts.
Like a theme song, like staying alive. Nope, Russ Cohen. Tell us what's going on.
But before we get into the hockey stuff, Russ and I were talking this morning about certain players in particular sports who just have a reputation for being, I'd say, outside the norm, and a guy like Chase Utley, who raised a lot of ire last year with the way he slides, and apparently it has no.
It was a great leap and slide. I'll tell you that.
Well, but he raised a lot of ire last year for a particular slide during the baseball playoffs, and in one of the first games this year, he essentially did the same thing. And this is not acceptable in the major leagues anymore, but Utley continues to do it, Russ. I mean, it's
here's the thing. When the rule came into effect as far as sliding in home plate, I wasn't in favor of it, but I understood it because players are a lot bigger now. Like, if we all went with that Pete Rose slide, he was one of the bigger players in the game. Now he would be just a simple second baseman in the game, and there are a lot bigger players. The Chase Utley thing, the catcher did what he was supposed to do with the rule. He literally gave him 3/4 of the base to slide in while he was getting a throw from the outfield, and Utley literally did a hand slide and almost went into him. The only reason he didn't go into him was because the catcher saw him at the last second and was able to get out of the way because the throw beat him there quickly. If the throw would have been a second slower, there would have been a big collision, and it didn't need to be. Like, this is a situation where a player is now going out of his way to be dirty on the base paths like Ty Cobb, and it's wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't this a little bit of like subtle intimidation? I mean, Cobb flashing the spikes, but sometimes not sliding with the spikes, but sometimes there's that famous picture with his foot basically heading towards somebody's stomach.
Well, anything that makes baseball more exciting by me is okay. I'm sorry. I mean, I watched opening day and I get into it. I sit there and I watch, and I realize, like, okay, this is something you do in the summer. And since I don't drink, I think that also plays into the fact
you're watching the Phillies, so you're not watching the higher level of baseball.
No, but I mean, and the players have gotten bigger, yeah, thanks to the fact that we're not feeding our children fluffernutters and high C for every meal anymore. But
hey, high C was good. That was good for field trips. I liked it on field trips.
Tang.
There you go, Tang.
Tang had to be good for you. The astronauts that drank it. It had to be good for you.
Tang is another contributor to my diabetes. Thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Basically, orange-flavored sugar.
All right, let's get going here with the show. Lots to talk about today, of course. And I'm going to explain to you why the San Jose Sharks are going to win the Stanley Cup. So we'll stay. That's a teaser for now.
You never give up, do you?
It's a teaser just for now. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, April 6th, 2016.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
Woohoo! And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday around this time. Welcome back, Kevin. It's nice to have you today.
Good to be here. A lot to discuss. I want to ask you guys your opinion. I am struggling with the Rookie of the Year decision, and normally I do not struggle on this. But man, I think it's a very difficult question.
It got good as of late, especially, huh?
Well,
yeah.
It's funny. It's funny, Kevin, because I spoke to a couple writers up in Toronto on the weekend, and the case that they made for Connor McDavid was the fact that not only, is he? I mean, Panarin has got the most points of any rookie, but McDavid's points per game is in the top 5 of the NHL, and that was their justification for giving him the award. I personally, to me, Gostisbehere has had the most impact, and I don't think the Flyers would be anywhere close to being a playoff team if Gostisbehere hadn't had the influence that he has had. So to me, if I was voting, I would vote for Gostisbehere first.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Gostisbehere he's certainly had an impact on his team, but you can't also nullify the impact that Panarin has had on the Blackhawks. Like, he's moved into their top 6, and the argument that Patrick Kane helps him, I've seen a lot of Blackhawks live this season, and I would argue that Panarin helps Kane as much as Kane helps Panarin. Like, they're very similar type of players. They read off each other, and what he's accomplished this season from start to finish, is noteworthy. And the whole argument about him coming over from the KHL, you can't have it both ways. Like, I run into pro scouts who argue with me that the KHL is nothing more than the AHL. Well, if that's the case, it comes to Rookie of the Year ballot, and you can't say, well, Panarin's had experience in the KHL while Connor McDavid is coming right up from junior hockey. Well, if the KHL is the AHL, then he's just coming from the AHL, which is what we expect of rookies. So I think it's very difficult. I've gone back and forth. I was convinced it was Panarin for most of the season, and then I went to Gostisbehere, and now I'm struggling a little bit with Connor McDavid. The only issue I have with McDavid is I think everybody agrees he is the most dominant rookie. Yeah. He is the rookie that there's the most buzz about. In terms of the impact he's had on the ice, he's number 1. But can you give it to a guy who's only played that few games? Like, there should be something in the rules, and there's not. It's that, like Bob McKenzie, I actually did a story about Gostisbehere, and I asked Bob McKenzie, who is a voter, how he felt about the minimum number of games. And what he has said is that he has his own Mario Lemieux rule, which is, Mario Lemieux won the MVP with having played 60 games, and that's sort of how he views it. It's sort of a Mario Lemieux, 3/4 of the season rule. And I get that. I mean, everybody's going to view it differently, but I really am struggling. I can make a case for all 3 of those players.
Yeah.
And I think it's tough. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind I'm voting for them in the top 3 positions.
Yeah.
And the other question I struggle with is, it seems incongruent to me if I'm going to vote for Connor McDavid 3rd, don't I have to put him 1st? Because so he's 42 games is enough to put him 3rd. Or like that seems wrong to me too. I think this is a very, very, very difficult decision, and I just don't know, where I'm headed. And the other thing I would bring up too is the Norris Trophy voting. I've been a Drew Doughty guy for much of this season.
Yeah.
But now that I'm here and I'm at the end, the one stat that I see that just overwhelms me when I read it, just because of the respect I had for the player, is, Carlson has the chance to become the first defenseman to lead the league in assists since Bobby Orr. Bobby Orr, like Bobby Orr we're talking about. Like, and it's hard to for me not to discount that. That's a fairly significant fact.
You're right.
I mean, how do you get past that?
Wow. Sorry. I'm logging out again.
Okay. These 2 things are near and dear to my heart. I wrote about the Calder race a week ago and wrote about a lot of those same things, Kev. The one thing I did notice, though, is I don't want to only look at the good stats. I look at the bad stats, too, because, look, Connor McDavid's having a great year. The impact he's having on his team isn't as great as the other 2 guys. It's not. And actually, in winning games for him, his face-off percentage is 39%. That's not really good. His percentage on the year is pretty good. It's something like 45, which is what most rookie defensemen are. So there are other things, too, where nobody wants to report it where McDavid's failing in because they only want to point out the successes, which is fine. I mean, he is a great player. And we all will say probably 10 years from now that he's probably the best player in this group. But he has to go through the grind, and I wrote about the grind. And that's important because the other players have gone through pretty much a full season. And when those guys are going through a full season, they go through ups and downs. And McDavid didn't really have to go through ups and downs, hitting the wall because he skated too much or played too much or taken too many face-offs. So I look at Gostisbehere, and, yeah, a lot of his goals have meant something, and they definitely have kept the Flyers in the race. Without him, the Flyers are not in the race.
I think he's really the Flyers MVP, you know. So for what that's worth, I mean, you know, I would vote for him as the Flyers MVP this year, which is pretty significant, you know, in the whole scheme of things.
Yeah.
That being said, I would vote for McDavid in this award. I would.
Well,
he would be my guy.
Panarin, you know, in the last week, Panarin has really turned it on because at the time that I wrote the article, he was sagging a bit. Larkin was sagging a bit, and so, you know, now it makes it tougher. But I really think it's more between Panarin and Gostisbehere, and I don't think McDavid really in that category right now. I just don't. I don't care about points per game. Yeah. It's a nice stat when you want to skew it for what you want to skew it to. You know, the Norris, I literally tweeted the other day when Ottawa was in town in Philly how Erik Karlsson was making really good defensive plays, but nobody wants to talk about that because they always just want to say, well, he's a below-average defenseman, but his offense is great. And, you know, I talked to a bunch of writers, and I brought up Brian Leetch, and I said, do we ever talk about Brian Leetch's defense? No. We talk about his 100-something point season, but he was a really good defender. And when I said really good, one guy said he was great. And I'm like, he was, but I don't want to seem like a homer. But the point is, Karlsson's pretty good on defense, and he possesses the puck a lot. But we do sort of look at only his failures and don't look at the fact that he's the most dominant offensive defenseman in the game, and as a result, has to be in the conversation.
You know what I think affects Karlsson the most is this. If you watch, you know, I don't think a lot of people have watched a ton of Senators games. I think that affects them. You know, they see the statistics and they see everything that's going on there. But then the people I talk to who do watch a lot of Senators games, and because I asked a bunch of people this the other day, some of my friends who are in that division, and they say, you know, like you know, and Kevin is in the division obviously. They say that one of the things that Karlsson does, more than some players, and it kind of grates on certain players, certain scouts' nerves, is the fact that he plays so many minutes.
Right.
That he realizes that he has to conserve his energy. And there are moments when he does things that are not quite as aggressive looking. Is this proper? Is this true, you think, Kevin?
I think there is something to that, but I don't think that's a negative. But I agree. You know, I was going to provide a rebuttal to what Russ said, and I have great respect for his ability to evaluate talent. So I almost hate to bring it up, but I think it needs to. I talked to a pro scout who said just the opposite of what Russ said. Who said, you know, when you view Karlsson, you're so overwhelmed by his offense that they tend to overlook the fact that he has not really made significant strides defensively. And he said that, you know, he is a average to below average defensive player. In one-on-one situations, he is not helpful to his team, and that his primary function, and maybe this isn't even his fault, is to get the puck up the ice and to play defense by possessing the puck.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think that's a function of the team too. Like,
yeah, that's right. Like Kevin's saying. I agree.
Well, no, I mean, I see the Senators regularly because they play the Leafs 4 or 5 times a year, and the thing with Karlsson, you know, he has to play near 30 minutes a night simply because the Senators' defense until they acquired Dion Phaneuf is essentially Mathot and Karlsson, and then a bunch of guys who, you know, I mean, Cody Cece's a fine prospect, but they're not very deep, and they have to play Karlsson that much. But he's exposed a lot of times in his own zone if he's not possessing the puck or skating, and he's one of the best, you know, skating defensemen and puck rushing defensemen in the league, and has incredible offensive instincts. But defensively, I've seen him get walked around. And it's not to say he's a below-average defender, but I think he's an average defender, and that's why I think Doughty, you know, should be favored. Karlsson may win it because, you know, like you said, Kevin, he, you know, was going to beat that record and have the most assists in the league. But I think there are some gaps in his game and eventually Doughty should win. Now, the one other thing, I mean, speaking to somebody in Toronto about the whole Rookie of the Year situation, they one of their motivations was, I can't go 5 years down the road and say I voted against, or Connor McDavid didn't win the Calder when he's the best player in the league. And I'm like, why? If he wasn't the best rookie, then he wasn't the best rookie. It doesn't reflect on anything of him being one of the best players in the league.
Well, that's what I want to bring up for a second.
About how history is going to look at it. You vote on it worrying about how it is right now.
Right, you have to vote on where it is now. And that's why when I was thinking about the Hockey Buzz Awards that we do later in the year, and I've always wanted to come up with really good ones that are different than the NHL awards. And one of those, I think, would be not Rookie of the Year, but Best Rookie. And if you change it to Best Rookie, what then? Then if you get to Best Rookie, that's just such a weird word, I know.
It's got to be the best prospect, then. You know what I mean? Like the highest rated prospect. If you do that.
No, just who you think you're the best. Basically, of Gus. So I'll try to explain it this way. So like Panarin, Gossipbeer, and McDavid are on the table. Who are you taking?
McDavid.
It's McDavid. So you're just going to take the best prospect. Right. That's what I'm saying.
Well, no, but he's it's not necessarily the best prospect because put Eichel into that category as well. Or you're going to. It is. I see you're saying. You're probably right.
David, still, yeah.
You're probably right, but there is also something to the fact that he has not had a terrible season. Like he has played well enough when he's in there. He's played very well. Now you can't help the fact that he's not in there all the time, and you can't help the fact that he's on the team he's on. So I mean.
But go ahead, Kevin.
Just let me finish up about Karlsson, and then I'll let it go. But I'm not suggesting that Karlsson's not deserving of the Norris Trophy because he is. He's had a phenomenal season, and there's nobody like him in the league. Like his ability to skate the puck up the ice and to dominate. But here's the bottom line in terms of evaluating his defense. The Senators are the 9th best offensive team in the league. He plays half the game. They have a good quality goalkeeper in Anderson who has a save percentage of .915, and I think it would be higher if they played better defense in front of him. Yeah. And yet they've given up almost 3 goals per game. I think they're at 2.99, and he's playing half the game. Well,
right.
That says they're not all that good defensively when he's on the ice. Right. I do believe that they need to upgrade that defense. It's not all completely his fault, but as I said, I'm struggling a little bit because I'm now, even though I've been a Doughty guy all year, now I'm thinking, this whole Karlsson thing as well. I mean, they're 1-2 to be sure, and the other thing I would say in all this is because I can see everybody now just ripping, jumping all over me on this. I mean, I would certainly want Karlsson on my team. I'm just saying I'm splitting hairs here, and it may be Doughty so.
Well, point totals, and I'll move on. Point totals are interesting because he does get a lot of points partially because Ottawa is playing from behind. Like he's in a situation where he has to take more chances. He's able to take more chances. He's able to create more points. If they were in a lot of one games and stuff like that, Karlsson would have to play a different style, or is he playing half the time? Is he the reason? So it is a chicken or egg thing.
When they were a playoff team, though, it didn't affect his numbers.
Right. And just like this year, I mean, Ottawa is in the bottom 7 or 8 in the league, whereas the Kings are could be the favorite in the West along with Chicago and Anaheim. I think that has to be taken into consideration. Just like Mark Stone's being involved with the Calder race last year was directly correlated to Ottawa making a run at the end of the year and making the playoffs. And I think Gostisbehere should benefit from that, whereas McDavid, as great as he is, Edmonton is an embarrassment as a 30th place team with 4 picks in the last 6 years, and he's done. I mean, he has elevated them in terms of his play, but he hasn't been able to carry that team any higher than they were the previous year.
Right. No, this is all good stuff. Let's move on. Before we get to the Russian thing, I wanted to talk about a couple things. Carey Price, I wanted to touch base on first of all. Carey Price has been shut down for the season, and my article today, I wanted your opinion on it, guys, is that if he's not going to play for the Canadians, he shouldn't play for the Canadians. So that's my gist of this. Now, I don't. Well, and I asked my readers, should Carey Price accept? Now he's not going to play for the rest of the year. Should he accept an invitation to play for Team Canada? And no, here's my opinion on this. No, I don't think he should. And I think, first of all, I really think that he owes it to the Montreal Canadiens, the people who employ him, to get healthy. I know that this is unpopular. Like, most people disagree with me on this, but I think that after what they went through this year and moving forward, I mean, Carey Price won an Olympics. Let Braden Holtby take the reins on this one and be ready for the NHL season for the Montreal Canadiens. That's my thought. Kevin?
I don't know. I mean, so the alternative is he's going to go to training camp, and if you're concerned about injury, you can just as likely to get injured at the in training camp as he is competing for Team Canada.
I don't know. I don't think the training camp's nearly the same level that
you're going to have to play exhibition games and so forth. I mean, the level of competition is greater, so I guess there's greater risk. But to me, I would have him play if he's ready to play for Team Canada. He's going to be ready to play for the Canadiens. So I don't see any problem with it. In fact, I'd encourage him to do it.
Well, the statement that came out said that he wasn't 100%, so that was the reason that they shut him down. Which to me, what it was this whole shell game the last couple months of selling hope that he was actually going to come back.
I think, yeah.
But to the point of the.
I don't think fans bought that either, Mike.
No, I don't think so at all. I really don't. Now, I don't think he's going to accept an invitation to the World Championships because I don't think he's ready.
Right.
He may be ready for the World Cup, but I mean, if the Canadians had a problem with it, I think they'd be justified. But according to what's going on, or what's been said by Doug Armstrong, who's the GM for Team Canada for the World Cup, he's going to invite, or he's going to be part of it. Unless he begs off and says, no, I'm not ready, he's going to be part of it. So, I don't have a problem
great
with it.
respect for him doing that. Like, that's my opinion on this thing. Like, my opinion is he is a player who is responsible to his fan base first. This is the kind of thing. At least that's my opinion. I mean, I don't know, the fans that you can get hurt playing exhibition games for the Montreal Canadiens, or you can get hurt playing in the World Cup for Team Canada. But at least in one case, you're playing for the Montreal Canadiens. To me, that matters.
But either way,
you're still playing for your country too. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to get him, and that's what's going to put him on the team. On that conference call, his name was mentioned about 12 times as far as being the most important guy on that team. Right. So he is going to have to beg off to not be on that team, and I don't see him doing it. I'm pretty sure he's playing.
And either way, they have to find out whether that knee is good to go. I mean, right. It was an MCL strain, of a rather serious nature. They didn't elect to have it repaired surgically. They went the direction of physical therapy. Right now it seems like a bad decision because the injury happened in November. If by September he is still not ready, then you have to worry about the long-term ramifications of Carey Price's career. He may not be the same goaltender that he was before the injury.
Well, if he's not there, though, if he's at that point, he's not playing in the World Cup. Like, he's only playing in the World Cup if he's played full out and he knows he's able to go. But not to say he can't re-hurt himself, but he's going to be,
Yeah, that's a pretty big leap. I mean, we've just gone from a guy that's had an injury that has been trickier than anticipated to Mike saying that his career is in danger. I'm not ready.
Okay, let me specify what I'm saying. He was the best player in the league by leaps and bounds last year. He was arguably the best goaltender in a decade or longer with the year that he had. I seriously doubt that being out a year with a knee injury that he's going to be the same goalie coming back. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying his career.
He'll have some rust to be sure, but yeah, I just don't see where. To me, this is his call. Like, if he thinks he's ready, he should play in the World Cup because I think his fan base, you mentioned them, would want him to play for Team Canada. They're going to want to know he's ready, and that'll get him ready.
Yep.
There's three goalies, so. But I also think he has to be honest. I think if he's not ready, he needs to tell Team Canada and say, look, I'm not ready to go.
I mean, I'd much rather bring him in a controlled way than throwing him into the fire. I mean, there's
but he'll know his body, and hopefully he'll be honest and say, I can't imagine. I think Mike just said this that he's going to go if he's not 100%. So
I mean, is he more important to the Montreal Canadiens or Team Canada?
Oh, it's more important to the Canadians.
He's way more important than the Montreal Canadiens and Team Canada. We can agree with
Team
that, right?
Canada said he was the most important player too. Like it's just it went hand. It actually goes hand in hand. But at the end of the day, it's the Canadians that sign his paycheck. I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
but
I just think this is one of those things
If
where
you were the owner of the Montreal Canadiens, though, how would you feel?
I mean, it's not like he's going out and participating in mixed martial arts.
Right.
God, you know what I mean? He's playing hockey. He's trying to help Canada win a gold medal, and in so doing, it'll make him sharper, for the season. So it's just more intensive, training.
How did Charles Wong feel about John Tavares participating in international?
Right, and Tavares is usually important to the Islanders, but you can even argue that Price is even more important to the Canadians. So at least that's what we've seen, right? So as we go through this whole process, all it takes is a flurry of players, a flurry of big American players rushing the net in the final minutes of a game, crashing the net for this guy to get hurt in intensity that would not have been there. We see the intensity that reaches in these World Cup in the Olympics. If the World Cup follows the Olympics at all, these games are going to be way more fast. They're going to be way more
physical. His dog's chew toy at home and hurt himself. Where at camp there won't be a chew toy, so you can make both arguments.
Right, he'll beg off if Chris Kreider makes Team USA.
Now I remember the only instance I have to go off of is I remember Peter Forsberg and the Flyers running into this situation. And I think it was the Flyers actually told him to play, right? The Flyers told him they wanted him to play in the Olympics. And Peter was like, Peter wasn't going to. He even mentioned this, I think, even in his Hall of Fame. I remember the Hall of Fame thing. He said, because he said he felt responsible to the Flyers to get healthy, to be there for them. The Flyers said, go and play. Maybe the Canadians will do it. But again, this is such a unique situation. This is such a disastrous season, such a big player.
That's what doctors are for. Like, the doctor is going to be right in on it, and, the doctors are instructing him what he's doing anyhow. I mean, it's not like he's doing it on his own. Nothing's
going to get him more ready to play for the Canadians than preparing for the World Cup.
Right.
I'm just not.
That's a good point.
I understand the risk, but we've crossed that path already with, with the Olympic participation. And what we've determined on that is ownership doesn't like it very much, but players say, so what? And
yeah, and I agree. And now we have the Olympics and we have the World Cup of hockey, and so we have both. And the World Cup of hockey part of it is it's more controllable than the Olympics, and it's partly the owners are in on that. So I think that's connected to it.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding like a libertarian, this should be his call.
No, and it should be his call, and it is his call. My question is, what should he say? All right, so let's just say, like, to me, that's the question. Like, if I'm Carey Price, I can't go to play for Team Canada when knowing until I've shown the Montreal Canadiens I'm able to play for them. Like, to me, if I'm Carey Price, I couldn't do that. Like that.
It's funny, Kevin. I always mistook you for Ron Paul.
But it's not like Carey Price is going to be doing like the jump that Tom Brady did off of falls and jumping 50 feet down into water. I'm sure the Patriots weren't thrilled about that either, but you can't control everything. At the end of the day, if I'm Carey Price, I'm playing. If I feel like I can play, I'm playing.
Yeah, and if I don't feel right, I need to be honest about it, and I think he will be. So.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we just disagree. I mean, I really see this as more of a, you do have to be responsible for your team first, and if there's a situation like this.
But the responsibility here, I mean, it's the responsibility for Price is, as Kevin said, is to be honest with himself, and if he's healthy, to play, and if he's not healthy, to not play. But the responsibility here in regards to Montreal is for Marc Bergevin to make the Canadians not wholly dependent on Carey Price to carry the load. He's been the most important player in that franchise the last 5 years, and they have good players in Pacioretty and Gallagher and Subban, but they don't have enough good players, and that's what they have to do, is improve that team dramatically this summer and make them less dependent on Carey Price. And that's been my case for a couple years.
I'll give you the positive of this.
Not a great team.
I'll give you the positive of this. For the time that Price misses in camp, Zach Fucale gets all those reps, and maybe he turns into his backup, and then in 5-10 years, he's their listed number one anyhow. So that's a good thing for that kid and maybe good for the club too.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's ready yet, Russ. I've seen.
No, but he'll get more reps in camp.
No, I get it. I mean, I guess it just comes down to like your own personal beliefs on who you answer to or whatever, or who you're responsible to. The Canadians aren't going to tell him not to go because the history of hockey is that they wouldn't say that to him. They wouldn't say to him, "Don't go."
Oh, you're going to say who you answer to. He's going to answer to his wife first and the Canadians second. Let's get that straight.
Right. Right. And his wife might say, "Hey, I'd like you to sign another big giant contract down the line." So therefore the wife might be okay with going on vacation a little bit longer and not training through the summer. There's all sorts of things that could come into play there, Russ. So you never know. Anyway, let's move on to this Russian situation real quick, because this is a breaking story right now. That the entire Russian U18 roster has been replaced with younger players one day before leaving for the Worlds.
Maybe.
And, some calling it the biggest mass doping scandal in sports history.
And now it's a maybe.
Now it's a maybe? All right, so what's going on, Russ?
Because, again, 5 players definitely tested positive. That's what we're hearing for meldonium. And it's basically the substance that Maria Sharapova tested positive for and got removed from tennis for. And so it's made in Eastern Europe, and there were definitely 5 kids that were on it. And so they blamed it on the coach. They fired the coach, and then they said the whole team's not going. But German Rupstov, who's a kid who's going to be in the NHL draft, who doesn't play in Russia, says he hasn't heard that about his team yet. And so there is some question as to whether the whole team's not going or is just the coach not going.
Okay.
And so now we don't really know, and it's going to be a situation where I guess until the plane lands, we're not going to know exactly what's going on. But it does show that this drug is a problem because it did just come up like in January. Now, apparently in the bodybuilding world, it's been around for a long time. But again, the sports world is always a little bit behind the bodybuilding world. And so testing-wise on it, that's where it gets iffy, because the KHL has said that it's now a banned substance, but they only said that a few months ago.
Right.
So, and it's not like they're actively testing their players on it right now, so we don't know where that stands.
Well, Russ, it got banned by WADA in January, so the KHL went along with WADA when they banned it. But the thing is, and I said this to you before, is now with a number of KHL players with the uncertain fiscal status of the KHL, you have guys like Radulov possibly coming over, Nikita Zaitsev, a defenseman who may sign with Toronto as soon as the KHL season's over with. We don't know whether these guys have been taking meldonium because it wasn't banned, and how that will affect their status of coming over to North America and coming over to the NHL. I mean, this is something that I think any team is probably going to test them before they sign, because this could be...
If it's a part of the NHL testing package, which we don't know.
Right.
That's another thing that we don't know now. And the only thing I know for sure is that the FDA has not approved it. So I don't know if you could even buy it legally in this country. I'm not even certain of that. So this whole thing, Eck, is really in progress, but it does have rippling effects to other players and maybe other leagues, but we'll see.
Oh man, and this, but you always wonder how much of this is out there, and it just, there's no way of knowing, and I don't ever blame some players for doing this, even because to try to get the advantage, and especially kids in Russia or whatever trying to get the advantage. I just think this is a tough one. What are your thoughts, Kev?
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about the story, but Eastern European drug usage has been a problem for a very long time, just because the cultures are different, and the way they view things is differently than the way we do in North America. But it's pretty clear that in North America over the last 6 to 8 years, there's been a heavy push to try to clean this up. So, and even though I think some of the Eastern European countries have been a little slow, it seems like they're aboard now if they're gonna get rid of at least some portion of the team or the coach as they come over here.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. And I'm covering the U18s, and now I really don't know what Russian team I'm covering. Like it's the first time this tournament's in the U.S., and then if that whole team doesn't show up, it'll be the first time a whole team didn't show up either. So there'll be a lot of firsts if that happens.
Wow.
And to potentially have a bunch of 16-year-olds playing against a bunch of 17-year-olds, I mean, you could have a massacre on your hands.
Yeah, it could be bad.
So what does Florida have that Canada doesn't have? Playoff teams.
Oh, I was going to go with sunshine, but okay.
Florida, for the first time in 20 years, has 2 playoff teams in Florida, in the Panthers and the Lightning, and of course we've talked about Canada not having any. But
yeah, but the way the Lightning's players are dropping like flies, I mean, it may be the Syracuse Crunch that makes the playoffs and not the Tampa Bay Lightning.
It's gonna be an interesting first round. But I mean, just let's talk for a second, Kevin, about Gallant and talent and all that's gone on there. I mean, this is an accomplishment.
Well, for certain, and I was on a radio show earlier today out of Vancouver, and they put forth the idea that the Panthers have sort of become sort of a national Cinderella team, like that. There's a lot of people that are sort of rooting for the Panthers because they've had so little success. Only making the playoffs twice and a number of years and so forth, and Dale Talon being a very likable guy, and Jágr, of course, everybody rooting for him. And I just ended up with a stat yesterday, which really sort of surprised me. You can make a case that Jágr has been at least tied with Patrick Kane for being the best offensive player in the game this season, because over the stat over points per 60 minutes played, they're actually tied. They're at 2.62 points per minute, because, as everyone knows, Jágr doesn't play nearly as much as Kane does. So, and the one thing about this team, normally I would say that a Panthers team that hasn't been in the playoffs and a team that doesn't have much playoff experience together, like obviously Jágr has some playoff experience and there are other veterans that have playoff experience, but this team as a group has no playoff experience, I would say, hey, they have to learn to lose in the playoffs before they know how to win. Now, to me, what mitigates that a little bit is the fact that the Panthers are built as a defensive team. Their strength is the ability to prevent pucks from going in their net. They have Luongo, who's had a good season. They have a defense that's predicated on strong defensive play, and Gallant has this team playing not true playoff hockey the way 2-to-1 hockey, but he at least has them in that mindset. So I don't know that they have enough to take down the Washington Capitals, but I think they're a little better prepared than it's not like they're a team that isn't capable of having a good run in the playoffs. I think they are, but I don't think they're going to be able to do it.
Well, I put them in that dark horse category. I mean, obviously the Caps are the favorite in the East, but with the slew of injuries that have happened in the Eastern Conference, I mean, Stamkos and Stralman and Hedman's a day-to-day thing, but they're out. The McDonough injury in New York, the goaltending problem, and Hamonic with the Islanders. I mean, right now Trocheck is the only big loss that the Panthers have had, and according to the Florida broadcast a couple nights ago, they said he may be back by the middle of the first round. They have the experienced guys like Jágr and Luongo and Campbell, who played his 1,000th game yesterday. I mean, to me, they're in a better position because of all the injuries of the other teams in the East, and they could at least get to the conference final. It's either them or Pittsburgh that get to the conference final against Washington.
I'll tell you this: I think their young players are pretty worldly too. I mean, again, Ekblad doesn't play like a young guy. Barkov is a son of a coach.
Yeah.
Grimaldi now, who's getting a spot with Trocheck not there, he's played in big situations for Team USA. He was in the Frozen Four. He just scored 2 goals the other night. So I think even though he is a younger guy, I mean, he's 22 because he's from college, from the NCAA system, he's pretty worldly too. So I don't think they have that many really super green guys. They just might not be playoff savvy, but they've got enough guys around them like the Jágrs and the Campbells where I think they can really put on a nice run here. And, Mike, just to add to that, Dan Girardi got knocked for a loop yesterday too. So Rangers won't say whether he's out for a couple of games, but he could be too. So, there's a lot of issues in the East other than the Capitals and maybe other than Florida.
Well, here's the interesting thing about this matchup thing, I love the matchups, but the Panthers the first 2 rounds for them are pretty good. I mean, they're going to face the Islanders, of course. It looks like the Islanders or the Rangers.
They want to face the Islanders. Did you hear the owner said he would rather face the Islanders than the Rangers?
Yeah, I mean, even though last night I predicted the Islanders would pass the Rangers, I think that people generally say the Islanders are the most likely team, right? So then they will play the winner of the other divisional game. So you're looking at Boston, Detroit, Tampa. So one of those three. So they have favorable records against all these teams. They they could go off to the conference final, and depending on who beats up who in the East, I mean the other Metro division is going to be a real war. I mean it's going to be an absolute bloodbath over there. You could see Florida arriving at the conference final in a lot better shape than either Pittsburgh or Washington or whoever's going to be over there.
I just think Barry Trotz and Alex Ovechkin and Braden Holtby are they can't be complacent, but I think they're just sitting back and laughing at how everything is going badly for most of the teams in the East, and all they really have to do is not resort to their usual playoff form, and if they just play the way they've played all year, I think they're obviously the odds-on favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference. I
totally disagree with this.
Oh my God.
You're not going to call them the favorite?
No, this is no. I'm not. No, they're the favorite. No question about that. But here's the thing. We saw that a Flyers series is going to be a war for them. Okay. Sure. The next series they'll play will be Pittsburgh. Penguins are playing out of their minds. How can you say this is an easy pass to the conference finals? I mean, these are two series that'll be incredibly insane. I mean, the Penguins. Nobody wants to play the Penguins right now. The Penguins are just playing. I mean, they're not beating teams by 2 goals. They're beating teams by 4 and 5 goals. All right, so the idea here, and the Capitals are already, they have to win a couple rounds to get this whole stigma off them. And granted, this isn't, they're perfectly set up. This is the best Caps team there's ever been. I think that's 100% true.
Rope-a-dope here too, though. You realize that, at the end of the season, we don't know how hard a lot of these players are playing when their teams are in it. Even if the game looks competitive to us, they definitely take it to a different level the minute the playoff bell rings. We are getting rope-a-doped a little. We are.
No, I do agree that they could roll on the Flyers. They could. They could roll the Flyers.
The 2 primary motivations for the Capitals right now were to get Braden Holtby 49 wins, which is not going to happen because he lost yesterday, and to get Ovechkin 50 goals, and he's at 47 now. So right now they're pursuing individual things.
Yeah, but none of that changes who they're going to have to play in the playoffs. I mean, they're going to have to play 2 teams that they don't want to play. Right off the bat. Kevin?
Well, I mean, I think your point is well taken, but I think it's fairly obvious. I mean, I think what you're saying is that that parity continues into the postseason, and that is true. And I was going to write this as a column this week, but other than the Capitals, is there any series that you could actually say in good conscience and call it an upset if the other team? No, you can't really do that. And I'm not even sure you can do it with the Capitals. I think they're the team to beat in the East, but just for the reasons that you said, the Penguins are playing really, really well, and now they're. The question I have about the Penguins is when you get to the playoffs, and we all know that the style of game changes in the playoffs, will their defense be able to convert? Will their defense move away from playing sort of a transitional style of moving the puck up the ice and then be able to play that kind of 2-to-1 preventing scoring chances type hockey? I know Chris Letang can do that because I've seen him do it through the years, but some of these other guys that are younger and newer, we just don't know what their conversion rate is.
Right. We go back to a couple of years ago when they were against the Flyers and it was a 7-6 game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying, and what did everybody say after that series is that the Penguins just weren't ready to play. That's why Bausma got fired. They couldn't play.
Yeah, definitely.
They couldn't play playoff hockey. So I agree with you. I mean, I think it's not going to be an easy path for the Capitals, but it doesn't change the fact I think they're better set up.
Me too.
Most teams.
I do agree with that. I mean, I think they're going to come out of the East. I really do. But this is going to be a battle and a half for them. And not just physically, but mentally, they're going to have to beat all of their demons in this thing. Sure. And that's going to play. And there's the thing with the Penguins. I am one of my favorite things is the Pittsburgh Penguins style and following it over the years. I love the Penguins have changed styles so many different times in so many different ways. If you remember the Michel Therrien team, right, that got to the Stanley Cup Finals, they were they were built on speed. They were there was a lot of defensive. They were very defense. Tyrion plays that defensive style. He was holding guys back, doing what Montreal does. They relied on goaltending. They had, of course, more talent up front than Montreal has in Malkin and Crosby, but they couldn't get it done. Bylsma came in and changed them from a defensive team to an attack team. Right, that's what he first did. Right. But the Penguins are very good defensively because of it. It's a strange thing. The Penguins become better defensively the more offensive they become.
Well, I mean, and Mike Johnston changed them from, or Mike Sullivan changed them from a possession team under Mike Johnston to a more offensive team.
Right, and he did. That's why he's having the success. This is the same pattern. This is the same pattern that went when Bylsma came in. This is the same thing that they did because that year when the Penguins won the Stanley Cup, the tough thing about say that team went through the Flyers to win the Stanley Cup, and in that series there were no 7-6 games. There were nothing. It wasn't like that. That series was a matter of the Penguins being so explosive the other way that the Flyers were afraid to do anything, and the Flyers would move into. If you look at the teams that have played the Penguins tough down the stretch here, they've been the Sabres, the Senators. They've been teams that aren't attacking them. If you attack the Penguins, you're screwed. Because what happens if you attack the Penguins, you leave yourself open. And this whole thing is built on that.
The difference here, Ek, is that the number 2 center this year, right now, is Nick Bonino. It's not Evgeny Malkin. And, I mean, they've been one of the hottest teams in the league. They've been one of the hottest teams in the league without Evgeny Malkin. But when it gets down to the playoffs, when everybody is playing more defensively responsible and closer checking, you need a guy like Malkin. And I don't think he'll be back until probably the second round of the playoffs, if at all. And if he is, he's not going to be at 100%. So they're without Malkin, they're without Mata, and he may be back, may not be back. Yeah. And you're maybe without Fleury, depending on this concussion situation. So all I was saying was the Caps would rather play the Penguins without those guys than with those guys.
No, right? I know.
The thing about Sullivan, too, and I heard him say it in Philly when they played their best defensive game of the year but also looked good on offense, is that he really – it's not like their defense first, but he wants guys to be responsible in their own end, and then they can go and do the other things they're good at. So he's not going to put a defensive liability on the ice, but he is asking everybody to play defense.
Oh, yeah, no, he does that. He does that, but
that helps their defensemen is that their forwards will kick in with defense.
But the Flyers match well against the Penguins, for example, when the Penguins are going at them and playing. But what's happened in these last couple games, we've seen the Penguins play the Flyers twice, and they've just dominated them, is they have let the Flyers attack them. And when the Flyers attack them, the Flyers defense gets exposed because it's the Gudises on the 2-on-1s against Crosby and Kessel on the 3-on-1s that are killing. That's where the Penguins get their strength from, and that's what's fascinating to watch because
PK is important too, right? And Carl Hagelin was always a PK specialist, and so he instantly shored up their PK. Same thing with the Blackhawks. Their PK had been failing without Marcus Kruger. The minute Kruger's back in, their PK is good. One guy could cure your whole PK for at least a minute to a minute and a half every time you got to kill a penalty, and that's important because in the playoffs that becomes huge.
Yeah,
I'm gonna dispute a little bit of what Eklund said. In 2008, for sure, Bylsma converted them to a attacking team, but during the playoffs, if you remember, it was like the shot blocking of Rob Scuderi and relentless defensive play. Orpik and Chris Letang played much more defensive than he would normally play. Like they converted to playing the defensive style. So my only point about this team is we don't know whether they can do that. Like I don't know whether Trevor Daley can become a defensive hound. When I know he's a great skater and he really helps this transition team and makes them very dangerous. But some of these guys, I simply just don't know whether they'll be able to do that. We know Letang can do it, but there's.
No, you're absolutely right. And the amazing thing is this team is 31-0-0 when they have a lead going into the third period. This terrible defensive team we're talking about, the Penguins, and that's like a crazy.
Well, I'm not saying they're terribly defensive. I'm just saying I don't know what they'll be able to do when the style of game changes.
Well, no, and I think they are. I mean, I'm not saying they're great defensively because you're looking at guys. I mean, they went and got Eric Schultz and Daley to shore up their defense. I mean, these are two guys that not Eric Schultz, sorry, not Justin Schultz and Daley, sorry, to shore up their defense. I mean, they went and got, other versions of Letang. Essentially, they went and they got these purely transitional defensemen, and so how they use them is just to create the, and that's their whole concept is they're counterattacking so much that teams are afraid to pinch. The teams are afraid to pinch their defensemen. Teams are afraid to get caught, and when they do get caught, the Penguins, I mean, they're winning the third period. It's not necessarily them shutting teams down. It's that they score 2 or 3 more goals because you're trying to take chances on them.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. Crosby basically said to me, I asked him about this subject, and like in that game against the Flyers, where the Flyers seemed to be comfortable in just trying to not let Pittsburgh get the big play, and they were trying to sort of just like hold them back. It was a failed thing. Crosby felt like they did well, but he even felt like they needed better scoring chances at the end of that game. So there is a lot of truth to that. But the point is that you can't do what the Flyers did and try and expect to hold them back and just play conservatively and just stay in the game. If you do that, you're going to lose no matter if it's the playoffs or not.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh, I mean, if they're going to emulate what they did in 09, I mean, you remember Maxime Talbot was a big force for that team and got the winning margin in Game 7 against Detroit. The depth forwards on that team are young. They have some guys like Wilson and Rust. They have the young guys like Pouliot on the third pairing. Not to say. Yeah, I mean, and Matt Murray he's a very good goaltender and a very good prospect, but we don't know if he has to be the main guy going into the playoffs, whether he can handle it at 21 or 22 years old. Whereas with Fleury, he's been tested for years and years in the playoffs. So there's a lot of question marks, but they've been one of the best teams in the last month or so.
No, I do agree, and I'm not disagreeing. But let's move on to the game of the night, which is the Flyers and Red Wings. So tonight, and there's other games tonight too, but the Flyers Red Wings game tonight for sure. Tomorrow night we have a ton of interesting games, but tonight Flyers Red Wings in Detroit. This is really, I mean, Boston losing a point last night was enormous in the whole scheme of things. We talked about we ran the whole thing out. So here's what you're going to decide, Kevin. You're going to help break the tie because here's what Mike, Russ, and I think have all been saying is going to happen. I've always thought Detroit was going to get that spot, the Flyers were going to get the playoff, and Boston was going to fall out. Russ thought Detroit or Boston would get that spot, Boston or Detroit would make the playoffs, and the Flyers would fall out. Mike thought Boston would get that spot, the Flyers would make the playoffs, and Detroit would fall out. So the three of us all have 3 totally different answers. Yeah. What's going to happen? You have to decide.
Well, it's interesting. I would have said last week Detroit was going to fall out. The 2 wins over Toronto and Minnesota were important wins. I don't think the Red Wings looked all that impressive in those wins, but the fact they were able to pull them out. I would say now that in the feeling in Detroit is the key that Philadelphia is going to be in, and that the Red Wings' hope is to outlast the Boston Bruins. So, and I think I agree with that. I think I'm a Flyers are in, the Red Wings are in, the Bruins are out guy, if I had to guess. And it's just based on how they're playing. Like Philadelphia is playing so much better than either Boston or Detroit that it's not really even like 5 days ago the Red Wings didn't even see the Flyers as being on their radar. I'm not talking about the team. I'm just talking about the fan base because they had games in hand and they were playing so well, and the Red Wings are just sort of limping along, winning a game, losing a game, that sort of thing. And Mrazek, who was their savior early, has now lost his job to Jimmy Howard, who's played okay, but it's not like he's carrying them. Right. He's been average, an average NHL goalie. So I would say the Flyers will win tonight, and then it'll all come down to the Red Wings trying to beat Boston tomorrow. And the Bruins, even though they've put up a big number against St. Louis, as we all know, they've struggled to score. And
I mean,
so
yesterday, Kevin, if it wasn't for a bad line change by the Carolina Hurricanes, Boston would have been shut out. I mean, Louis Eriksson scored when basically there was nobody on the ice for the Hurricanes. They could not beat Cam Ward. And Tuukka Rask actually played a pretty good game. Other than the one goal he allowed in regulation was a long shot that was tipped, but he played really well. And that has been a concern of the Bruins is getting Rask to come up big, and he actually did yesterday. But they only get a point, and now honestly I think the game tonight is big. I think the game tomorrow in Boston is so much bigger. And again, I just I think Boston is better than Detroit. That's just my personal opinion, but they haven't reflected it lately. That game in Chicago, they woke up when it was 6, when they were down 6-0. If they would have played even half decent in the first half of that game, they would have probably gotten at least a point out of it because they scored 4 goals.
To me, the most interesting part about tonight's game is the fact that Jimmy Howard's in, right? Because 4 weeks ago, we would have said Mrazek is going to be their goalie right through the playoffs, right through everything. And Jimmy Howard has worked his way in recently. And so they're going with the experienced guy. I think this is a tough game for the Flyers to win because their defense has actually played so well. And if Andrew McDonald's not in there, now that's a change to their defense that they don't even know how they're going to react to because they had one day to practice with Medvedev. And McDonald looked good in practice, people said. But it seems like he may have failed the concussion protocol and really just can't play because of that. So that seems like it's a technicality that he's not going to get to play. And so that could upset them for that one game. That could literally throw them off a bit.
Give you the one positive of Medvedev over McDonald. McDonald's been good, but he's not fantastic. But I think that this Flyers team has really, really struggled when other teams pull their goalie at the end of games, and because they don't have big shutdown veteran defensemen in the back. Like they don't have that to actually clear the puck, to clear the front of the net, that kind of thing. They have just gotten killed on those. They've lost more points that they would be in second or third place in the division if they just could get 4 or 5 of those points back. But I think Medvedev is that's actually a spot where I think he's probably the best player they have for that in that particular instance. With the team crashing, because he actually has the experience. He is bigger and he has the ability to move guys out. He's not. McDonald's also been very good, but I think that could help them. I actually think Detroit's going to win tonight as well, though. I'm kind of with you. I think this is.
Matchup is that guys on the Detroit third and fourth line have been pretty good lately, especially guys like Glendening and these guys that are just getting these hard-working goals. That sort of seems to me like it's really helped keep them afloat. And those kinds of guys do sort of give the Flyers trouble. Like the Flyers, if you tell them, hey, watch Datsuk and Zetterberg and whatever, they're going to do a pretty good job, even though we've proven that Datsuk has been a Flyer killer in his career when healthy. But other guys have done a good job.
I have to tell you, Russ, watching Detroit in person last Saturday, I was watching particularly Datsuk. I mean, obviously he's getting older, but there's something wrong there. I think he's playing hurt because he wasn't the Datsuk of old. He was making some decent plays, but wasn't really standing out. And this was against a team that was basically an AHL team, with the exception of a few players with the Leafs. So I mean, in a big game like this, yes, his numbers against Philadelphia, he's always had good career numbers.
You said it last week, right? And in Philly, he had 2 points.
Right. Yeah, but he's going to have to come up big again. But I don't know physically whether he's up to it.
I know.
What do you think, Kevin, about Datsuk?
He's actually played pretty well of the older players, but he has not been the player that he's been in the past. And I thought he's lost the puck a few times in the last 4 or 5 games, which is really uncharacteristic. I mean, him carrying the puck in the zone and then getting his pocket picked. I haven't seen that very often. And he did that against both Toronto and Minnesota, and that wouldn't happen at all. Like he always can control the puck.
Right. Yeah. I think that I think the Flyers, honestly, and I said this a couple of people last night who asked me, just ran into me, and I said, yeah, I think if they don't win tonight, they're in trouble. I honestly think that, because I really do see how this could play out. Even in Boston getting the 1 point, I think that this weekend with Pittsburgh and the Islanders is not an assured that if they have to get 3 or 4 points out of that weekend, they're in trouble.
They're going to pick up 2 points tomorrow, Ak. That's
the expectation, but you never know.
But Toronto has a winning record against the Flyers in his last 3 years when the Maple Leafs have been horrible. So it's hard to say,
No, I mean, look, you're right, Mike. I mean, the Leafs aren't fielding a great team, but it still doesn't mean upsets don't happen. Like we still see the Leafs winning the occasional game.
That's true. That is true.
It is happening.
The Flyers need to win these next 2 games and then that'll put them in. I think if they win
with Kevin here, we do need to talk about Mike Babcock talking. Definitely out of frustration, saying that he wishes the NHL would change their rule so that the teams that make the most money can spend the most money on players. Now, that would be a really nice, convenient thing to have changed now that Mike Babcock's on a team that can't spend the most money and actually has to do it the hard way. I thought that was like, really, Mike? Come on. What do you think about that, Kevin?
I didn't hear that. So what was he saying now? He was saying that the teams with the most money
Yes.
should be able to spend the most money? What are you saying? Like you think that's the
I got it.
Well, that was the same argument that people in Detroit have made for years. So
It reminded me of coming right out of Detroit. That's what I thought, because Detroit obviously used to be one of the teams that spent the most money.
Well,
yeah.
Kevin, I was in Toronto on Saturday, and then during the press availability after the morning skate, Babcock essentially said, normally this time of year I'm getting ready for the playoffs, and he just sort of sounded forlorn when he said that. I mean, obviously he's made the playoffs every year since 2004, so he's used to being in the playoffs, and he's essentially after Saturday his main job is going to be scouting the Toronto Marlies during the Calder Cup playoffs. So he's not used to this, and he's used to having more weapons to work with, and I think this is just an expression of his frustration that, and which to me, I think, and not to say that Mike Babcock controls everything that goes on in Toronto, but his mindset and his well-being is definitely something that the organization is going to want to, he want him to be of a positive mind. This to me forces them or puts them in a posture of, we need to get some talent for this guy to work with during the summer. And again, I say that means they're going to go full out for Steven Stamkos. They're going to go full out for guys like Jimmy Vesey, and they're probably going to make a signing or two in free agency. This, I think they're more towards coming out of the rebuild. They're still going to be rebuilding, but I think they need to get him something to work with.
Yeah, no, I can't find the quote right now, but it's pretty much exactly what Russ said. But it was really something pretty funny. Let's get to the NHL Draft Lottery Simulator. And if you want to find out why the San Jose Sharks are going to win the Stanley Cup, you're going to have to check my blog. So because we're running out of time.
Oh, we're going to miss that, Jim?
Yeah, you're going to wish why the Sharks are going to beat the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup Finals. That's flat out there. I have it today.
I think the Sharks have a better chance of surviving Sharknado than they do winning the Stanley Cup.
They're going to beat the Panthers in the Stanley Cup. Here we go. Ready? Let me get this up for you guys. I'm looking at it. I'm like, hey, this is great. I can see it, but you guys can't. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. All right, ready? Picking the winner today, we have... Oh, that's around me. All right. We're getting a lot of hate mail about that, Mike. You know this. The next up, we got the Edmonton Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks.
Hey, Canada gets the top 3.
Yep.
The sweep.
It's a draft made for TSN. There you have it. So, remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about what is an incredible night tomorrow night of hockey that we have on tap. Like some of the huge decisions will be made tomorrow night. But tonight, watch the Flyers Red Wings. It'll be fun. Talk to you soon.